All right, so we're all producers, and most of us have something like this, either a laptop or some type of desktop computer, or we have this, a MIDI controller. Pretty much all the music producers I know have a MIDI controller. Or some producers have this, a standalone hardware setup. And to be honest with you, there is a gazillion producers out here who have the same thing that you have. However, there's some producers that actually move up the ladder a little bit faster. And the reason why is they develop their own style. And when you develop your own style, you tend to stick out a little bit more. So let's talk about it.
Bolo!
Now, I've been producing for 25 years now, and one thing I can say is I've seen a ton of producers. And one thing that I've noticed in probably about the past maybe 10 to 15 years is I've seen a lot of producers working with each other. And with that, I've seen a lot of producers get on. I've seen a lot of producers have turned their whole lives around by working with other producers, which is a very cool thing. But I have noticed that a lot of stuff is starting to sound the same. It's not like how it was when I was coming up in like the 90s, the 2000s or whatever, when a lot of producers were producing by themselves and they had a particular sound. And that particular sound, you could turn on the radio or turn on any music video and you could pretty much tell who the producer was by the drums, the style, and just pretty much how the whole production sounded. And that was very cool at that time because when you were doing an album as an artist, you would say, hey, I need this particular record. I need a Manny Fresh type of a beat, or I need a Timberland type of a beat, or something like that. So you could really distinguish the sounds of producers back then. And that's what kind of made things so dope because you had different creative styles, even though it all worked for the time that the music was out. Now, it just seems like with everybody kind of working with each other, it's like a lot of people are feeding off of each other, which is actually a very cool thing, but a lot of the music is starting to sound the same. And reason being is that a lot of people are not producing by themselves anymore, and they're not developing their own personal sound. They're just pulling from a whole bunch of people, and then pretty much everybody is just basically taking a little bit of this and taking a little bit of that, but it's all starting to just jumble up and sound the same. So what I tell people a lot is the reason why a lot of these producers that are usually the big producers that historically are going to be some of the biggest producers of all times is because they had time to develop their own particular sound. And there are some producers out here who have a particular sound in particular areas. Like some people have a sound by playing melodic keys. Some people have a sound by being the snare and hi-hat guy. And some people know how to make really good bass lines or 808 lines that can really drive a record, which that's cool. However, for the people who do not have that type of money or the type of resources to pull people in, a lot of times is you might pull in a friend or two or whatever, and then y'all might produce and stuff like that together. And then a lot of times you just basically, bouncing ideas off each other. And then you start to notice that you start to sound alike. And I'm noticing that with a lot of the younger producers out here, because basically when you're producing with somebody who's making the same type of music you're making, a lot of times it just sounds pretty much alike. So what I want to tell a lot of you guys is if you can, and if you do have time, make sure you still, even though if you are producing with other people, make sure that you still have time to produce full tracks on your own. And make sure during that time that you kind of focus on developing a particular sound that can stand out amongst all the new producers that are out right now, because there is a ton of new producers that are out right now. And then for one way for you to stand out is for you to continue to develop on your particular sound, your particular style of production, your particular way of doing things, because if not, then you will sound just like everybody else and you will be stuck going in a loop of trying to, stick out amongst all these thousands, even potentially millions of producers that are out here that are trying to get on certain albums or get to certain artists. So what I will say is this, it's cool to cook up with people. It's cool to do all that stuff. I kind of recommend it when, of course, if you're working on somebody's album or something like that and you get called up to do it, of course, do it. But still, if you're trying to get over that hump to be amongst the status of some of the greats, I will say work on some music by yourself, okay? And try to develop your own style that can carry you above just being somebody who is basically producing with 5 other people on a track, and then those 5 produce the same type of records, who produces the same type of records for this other 5, and this other 5 produces the same type of records. And in that way, you really will not stick out to becoming, a really big, well-known producers. Because if you look at some of the well-known producers right now, you can kind of determine, okay, this person worked on this beat or this person worked on this beat, and then they could stick out. And if you're kind of finding yourself kind of like in that area to where you're kind of getting there, but you're not really going further than what you thought you would be, try to develop something to where people can recognize you in the track rather than you just being a person who is just contributing to a track. All right. So hope you guys enjoyed this. Hope you guys learned something from it. And like I always say, peace out.